Welcome to this short video about the transactions of the Unitarian Historical Society. Our journal is published annually and the latest issue for 2023 is now available. That's volume 28, number 2. We also have a new website, and there'll be a link to the website in the description of this video below, so you can click on there to find out much more about the Society, and particularly about its activities and its useful databases, as well as details on how to join the Society and how to subscribe to the transactions. The latest issue is full of interesting material. We have an article by David Wykes on the Unitarian Fellowship Funds, which began in about 1816 and were founded by a layperson called Dr. John Thompson, and these have never really been looked at in any depth before. And another article by Beverly Ronalds looks at Emily Ronalds and her social reform work in the 19th century. Again, new research, in this case on an individual who's really been overlooked by historians. We also have a review article by Alan Ruston, which looks at the 5-volume Oxford University Press, The Oxford History of Protestant Dissenting Traditions. A very important in-depth review, as well as all the usual reviews and other material you expect in the transactions. But in this video, I'd particularly like to look at one of the articles, and that's the article William Sunderland Smith, 1833 to 1912, by Ian Wood. Now, this is William Sunderland Smith, and Ian Wood is his great-great-grandson. But we can look at this video as a sort of visual footnote to the article. We are a print journal, and the latest issue does carry a number of illustrations, but Ian Wood has supplied us with some fascinating photographs, which I think it's worth looking at in some more depth. And I'm grateful to Ian and to his family for digitising and supplying these pictures. Now, the article details the history of William Sunderland Smith's career. It tells us about his family. His first wife died and he remarried. He had a long and interesting ministry, which really divides into 2 parts. The first part of his ministry was about 12 or 13 years, which he spent in Scotland and England. So he was minister successively in Aberdeen, Rawtenstall, Doncaster, Tavistock and Crediton. Here's a picture of Crediton, which is always interesting to look at, because the Crediton meeting house was made of cob. That is basically mud bricks. And it's usually said, the largest building in England to be constructed of cob, now sadly demolished. As an aside, the meeting house at Crediton is interesting because one of the ministers earlier in the 19th century was the Reverend John Johns, a poet, a man described by the Reverend John Hamilton Tom as looking as sensitive as if he had no skin, and yet who became the first minister of the Liverpool Domestic Mission in the slums of Liverpool, and who died tending to the sick who had come to Liverpool from Ireland after the famine in 1847. But that's an aside. William Sunderland Smith came to Crediton some years later, but stayed only a short period, and in 1872 he moved to Antrim, to the town of Antrim, and this is the meeting house as it looks today. This is how it looked in 1913, shortly after W.S Smith's death. The church was built in 1700 and was most notable for its association with John Abernethy, who was minister in the early 18th century. It underwent major renovations in 1891 during the ministry of William Sunderland Smith, as the date stone shows. Antrim is one of the few places where the meeting house, where the church is actually considerably smaller than the manse. And the manse where William Sunderland Smith lived with his family is still there, although hardly recognisable as a manse or as a house really. But you can read all about the manse and its place in local history in the article in the Transactions. But we hope to restore the Antrim meeting house at some point in the future, a place that stopped being used for worship in 1975 and became the home actually of a boxing club. It's now back in church hands, and there are plans to turn it into something that will be useful for both the denomination and for the local community. But when W.S Smith was there, he must have been one of the most notable characters in the town. And we have the Wood family and William Sunderland Smith's son, William Ivan Smith, to thank for these photographs. W.I. Smith must have been quite an effective photographer, and he came to visit his father and his stepmother in Antrim in 1902, and he took these pictures. So this picture shows W.S. Smith on his trike. He was probably about 70 when this picture was taken. But he did become, as the article shows, quite a notable figure in that town, contributing articles, nature notes to the Northern Whig newspaper, and contributing academic articles in different places, including the Ulster Journal of Archaeology. His second wife was Clara, and W.I. Smith took this photograph of Clara in 1902. She's wearing, I think, mourning clothes, and her mother died in about 1902, so that would fit. But it's a very striking, characterful picture. William and Clara had married in 1869 in Cirencester, where Clara was a Sunday school teacher in the Unitarian Church there, and they got married in the Unitarian Church in Cirencester before coming to Antrim in 1872. And another photograph which William Ivan Smith took in 1902 is this photograph of the interior of the meeting house. Now, it may not at first glance look that remarkable, but it is a very rare surviving example of a picture of the interior. One of the things that W.S. Smith did when he was minister there was turn the interior. Like a lot of very old meeting houses, and this one was 1700 it was built, the original pulpit was situated on the long wall. In my collection, I have an unusual postcard which depicts the interior before it was turned. It shows the original location of the pulpit on the long wall, and whoever created it has cut out a picture of John Abernethy and stuck it over the pulpit. But W.S. Smith turned the interior around, so the pulpit went on one of the short walls and the pews were all faced towards the pulpit. And you can still see the moulding where the pulpit was placed by W.S. Smith in 1891 and where it stood until 1975. So this picture, taken in 1902 by W.I. Smith, shows the view looking down the church from the left-hand side of the pulpit. And he was a very skilled photographer, his son, because it's not just a picture of pews. You can see the stove on the left, and behind that, if you look carefully, you can see not just the arms of the collecting ladles, but also W.S. Smith's hat. A nice touch to include the minister's hat at the back of the church. So these pictures accompany the article by Ian Wood. There are, as I've mentioned, some excellent articles. You can take out a subscription if you click on the link below and become a member of the Unitarian Historical Society. Thank you for watching.